Problematic behavior. Evidence-based practices. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to understand the importance of school-wide consistency when responding to problematic behavior, develop a corrective consequence flowchart that defines classroom managed and office managed behaviors and how to respond to each, develop an office discipline referral form effective for problem solving. Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, also known as PBIS, is a proactive systems change process with a focus on improving school climate. The underlying concept is teaching behavioral expectations in the same manner as any core curriculum subject. Rather than telling students what not to do, the school focuses on preferred positive behaviors. The three critical features to a successful framework implementation are systems, practices, and data. These three critical features work together to promote positive, predictable, and safe environments for everyone in the school setting. Today, we will be focusing on practices and responding to problematic behaviors. Let's start with a case study. Johnny is an 8th grader at a local middle school. After spring break, he walks into his first hour class chewing gum. First hour, his teacher sends him to the office for chewing gum in her class. Second hour, teacher 2 lectures him on chewing gum in her class. She stops her lecture, shames him until he spits out the gum in the trash can, and make all his peers watch and then assign him lunch detention. Third hour, Johnny chews his gum and even pops bubbles while listening to his teacher talk. Doesn't even face his teacher, and she is completely okay with the gum. Now we have Sam at school B. Sam is an 8th grader at a local middle school. After spring break, she walks into her first hour class chewing gum. Her teacher welcomes all students with a smile and takes the opportunity to discuss the school-wide rules and expectations. Sam remembers the rules on chewing gum in school and walks to the trash can, throws her gum away, and continues to do her schoolwork. Second hour, teacher 2 notices Sam is chewing gum and responds to Sam. Hi, Sam. Do you remember the school-wide expectations for chewing gum? Sam responds with, the Tiger way is to respect property by only chewing gum outside. And then Sam proceeds to the trash can to spit her gum out. Third hour, Sam walks into class and immediately spits out her gum. And her teacher responds with, Sam, thank you so much for respecting school property the Tiger way and spitting your gum out. So, can you guess what happens on day 2 when Johnny walks into school A chewing his gum? He finds himself frustrated with the inconsistent rules and expectations. He also blames his first and second hour teacher for not being as cool as his third hour teacher and for also being mean and unfair as the situation gets worse. Do you blame him for his frustration? Now let's look at school B. Sam doesn't have the same frustration as Johnny. In her school, there are consistent expectations. The consequence for chewing gum is the same in every room for every teacher. The situation becomes about following the school-wide expectations, which is respect property, versus a power struggle on what happens in my classroom. Why are we here? Why are we discussing gum chewing and consistent expectations? The purpose of this lesson is to empower you to change the culture of your school to have a more positive climate so that you have the best resources to be able to teach your subject. When schools and educators are implementing best practices, kids will want to be at school and kids will become ready to learn, and classroom disturbances will decrease. Change is tough, and as educators, you have high expectations. However, these practices that we will discuss will help you prevent problems and behaviors in your classroom. Responding to problematic behavior. Corrective consequence flowchart, office discipline referral form. Defining problematic behaviors. Our first step is determining the difference between a classroom managed behavior and an office managed behavior. When defining minor behaviors, it is important to have clear definitions. Just like with our positive behaviors, we want to have definitions of what we will actually see. As a school, it is important that you implement consistent practices. Like in our case study with Johnny, it is important to make sure you have consistent practices. That way, when there is a problem, you can develop an effective solution to the problem. Because if teacher 1 is sending Johnny to the office for sending gum, and teacher 2 is taking away his recess, and teacher 3 is not doing anything, you have not set Johnny up for success, and you are going to have a really hard time developing a solution to solve that problem because 3 out of 5 teachers in school A are doing something completely different. Whereas, referring back to school B, if you all are on the same page, Sam knows exactly what is expected of her, and you can develop a solution to that problem that can be followed consistently across the whole school. Corrective consequence flowchart. Now that your team has developed the problematic behavior, we will discuss the product used to implement best practice for managing those behaviors. When developing your corrective consequence flowchart, it is important that all staff have a list of clear steps to take when a student engages in a minor behavior versus a major behavior. Here we have a consequence flowchart for ABC Elementary. This document provides your school the opportunity to avoid situations like in our case study for School A. When setting up school-wide procedures, you first want to define major versus minor behaviors. What behaviors are you going to manage in the classroom? And then what behaviors will be determined and managed in the office? One way for the entire school to be on the same page is to use a flowchart. Consider this example for a consequence flowchart. This is what it looks like to define a consistent procedure school-wide. Let's take a look at ABC Elementary's flowchart. The first thing ABC Elementary has on the flowchart is that they have defined what a minor behavior is and what a major behavior is. Minor behavior equals classroom managed, major behavior equals office managed. These are just examples you can change and adapt to the needs of your school. Minor behavior. This step is where you will set up your procedure how to manage a minor behavior in the classroom. Step 1. Redirection. Consider redirecting the student back to the task. Increase your support by increasing your supervision. Praise others around the student to encourage the student to engage in appropriate behavior. However, if the behavior continues, move to step 2. Step 2. Give that student a warning. For example, Johnny, chewing gum in the classroom is not respectful. If you continue, blank will happen. Step 3. Staff delivers consequence. Minor behavior happened. Johnny was chewing his gum in the classroom. You tried to redirect. You increased your supervision. You gave your warning, and the behavior persisted. Now, you will deliver your consequence. As a team, your school will determine what those consequences are. For example, conferencing with a student, brainstorm replacement behavior, contact home, loss of privilege, etc. Step 4. Complete ODR form. So once you've given the consequence, you will complete your office discipline referral form. That way you have documentation that X behavior happened in the classroom and the consequence you gave for the behavior. Step 5. Complete additional ODR forms for major behavior, if necessary. Major behavior. Here you have your procedures for major behaviors for ABC Elementary School. This is their school-wide procedure when a student engages in a major behavior. Let's say Johnny got in a fight with one of his classmates. Step 1. Ensure safety by ensuring all students and staff are safe. Evacuate area if you need to. Step 2. Utilize de-escalation techniques to approach the students, such as moving slowly, minimizing your body language, speak respectfully, use brief language, and speak calmly. Step 3. Complete your ODR form. At this point, you will have the staff or teacher that witnessed the incident fill out as much as they can, and then leave the section blank for the administrator. Since this is an office-managed problem, the administrator will indicate which consequences will be given. Step 4. Submit ODR form and send student to the office. Submit completed ODR form to the office. Send that student with an escort or contact the office to let them know the student is coming, or you can ask for an administrator to come, or also avoid discussion with student. Use short, direct statements to instruct the student. Please walk with me to the office. Step 5. Administrator delivers the consequence. Potential consequences include conference with student, brainstorm replacement behavior, contact home, parent meeting, loss of privilege, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, time in the office. Step 6. Administrator meets with the teacher. The administrator will follow up with the teacher to discuss the incident, response, and plan for preventing future problematic behaviors. Examples of consequence flowcharts. Here you will find examples of the schools in our current grant of Cohort 1 of the School Climate Transformation Grant that are currently implementing the corrective consequence flowchart in their schools. You will find that each flowchart is adaptable to each school's system. Elementary examples, we have Dixon Lower Elementary, Vian Elementary, and for secondary, we have McAllister High School and Chickasha Middle School. Office Discipline Referral Form, known as ODR. Now that your school has developed a consistent school-wide procedure to responding to problematic behaviors, we will discuss filling out your Office Discipline Referral Form. It is important to document each time an incident occurs and a consequence is delivered. The data gathered will help your team identify school-wide problems and also problem-solve supports for individual students. Here we have the ODR form for ABC School. Please note that the point of this form is to document for the purposes of data collection. When your team determines a continuous problem, you now have documentation of that problem behavior and the key components needed to solve those problems. Identifying information. It is important to make sure you provide all or as much information as possible. Student name, homeroom teacher, referring teacher, grade, date of incident, and time of incident. Next, you will check all that apply. Mind you, these behaviors will be predetermined by your school. Next, you must check the location of the incident. When collecting data and problem solving, this is a very key component. It is very important to provide the location for data purposes and problem solving. Possible motivation. As you learned in Module 2, understanding why a student is behaving a certain way can be so empowering. For the sake of data purposes, this provides your team the opportunity to provide the student with more supports when understanding what's driving that behavior what is driving that student's behavior. Finally, we have the response section. As your administrator follows up, this piece of information can be useful in understanding the consequences given or the status of the consequence. I hope you have found these documents useful in the implementation of your Universal School Climate Best Practices. Thank you for listening.